Welcome back. Dr. Paul Hunter joining us on the show today from the Columbia Summit Vet Hospital. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good. We'd also like to introduce you to a very sweet puppy, labradoodle, 6-month-old Elsie. And she's fairly new on the scene, being just a puppy. And she's had a nice bath today as well.
Yeah, she's nice and damp.
She is. Well, that's
So
all right.
she's used to it. She's from Abbotsford.
Yeah, 6 months old. She's from Abbotsford. She's used to all the rain. Anyway, so we thought we'd do a segment on puppies and the importance of doing certain things, the procedures you should be carrying out when you have a small dog that is growing still. And this is the key here. This is one of their owner's first questions. Chad Klassen, of course, he works for us in the newsroom, and his girlfriend Melissa, they've had this dog just for a little bit, and they're curious to know, how big is Elsie going to get?
Well, Elsie's at 6 months, getting pretty close to her definitive size in height, and that she'll fill out as she gets older. But we use this cool little graph chart, growth chart, to determine roughly how large they'll be as they grow.
Right.
So I don't know if you can see that on the TV.
I'm sure we can get a close-up in a minute.
By taking the weight at their age on this date and their weight, we can put them on this curved graph of normal growth lines and then determine that she's going to be about 65, 70-pound dog.
Where is she in this timeline?
She's right there's her age, and there's her weight. So she gets that point right there.
Okay.
So this is pretty handy, and over time, you know, I've found that it's really a useful tool because people always ask that question: how big is my dog going to be?
Because you kind of wonder, is the house big enough? Of course, Elsie has taken this opportunity to eat all the dog treats over here, so I don't blame you. I would have done it too. Yeah, no, she.
So she'll grow some more.
So she's going to get what? How many more? If she's what, another 20 pounds maybe? Or?
Well, if you look at the curve, I mean, she's mostly up near the top of her weight, and she's going to gain maybe another 10 pounds or something. 10, 15 pounds.
Okay, that's not too bad.
No, she's going to be a nice sized dog. You may have to get a new car.
And I suspect that Elsie may shed some hair. That's just a guess on my part, but I'm pretty sure she's
a labradoodle, and that's one of the reasons they came up with this kind of what they call a synthetic breed, where they crossbred to determine to get a kind of a minimalist shedding, hypo or minimal allergenic type of dog that's smart and friendly and easygoing and all of that. And that's one of the modern thing in breeding is to come up with synthetic breeds, as it were, and labradoodles were the first one. And you know, they're pretty nice dogs by and large, and with you know, maybe less than average problems, you could say.
Yes.
So the question that we were talking about here, she is 6 months, and what should have been done and what should be done before you're never finished with her, but at this point. So at this point, she would have had all her vaccines done at 6 to 8 weeks, 10 to 14, and then 16, 14, 12 to 16 or whatever that last one is.
It sounds like they still have another one on the way. How important is that to keep those going?
It's important because the last vaccine typically, while the first two are repeats of distemper, hepatitis, parvo, parainfluenza, they're repeated twice, and then we do a third vaccine of parvovirus and rabies vaccine for the first rabies vaccine, which is very much a public health issue. And while rabies is not prevalent in BC, it's a concern. And bats are carriers, and we've talked about that before here. Yes. But it is something that is to protect both the families, the dog, and the public at large, and something that everyone should do with a dog or a cat.
Let's talk about ears. They were mentioning that sometimes Elsie's ears can get a little bit red, a little bit. Is that normal? Is something as they're growing, they tend to... They don't look red to me, but you're the doctor, not me.
Well, yeah, I mean, she seems to have normal ears, and so some dogs will get you know, ear infections and stuff.
Right.
About 70% of recurring chronic ear infections are allergy-based, so there's a problem, of course, but she seems normal. Sometimes they're just red from being out in the cold, and just like us, right? And the nose runs and all that stuff when you come in from outside. But at this point, I wouldn't be alarmed. But, you know, back about things to do. You know, the things, very quickly, we got to go over this, I imagine, but, you know, get the vaccines done and deworming from about the first vaccine through to about 3 or 4 months of age. And that's to cover them for the kind of standard parasites that dogs will get. Right. And keep them minimally affected. And that'll help with skin and coat health as well. And then we get them spayed 5 to 6 months, spayed or neutered, to, you know, deal with the problems of overpopulation. And doing them young like that, you see very little change in the dog's behavior, but also you see the benefits of kind of retaining their puppy-like behavior and little input into the breeding behavior, so that they kind of remain great family members and pets, right? And then Other things that we do, kind of assess with owners what their traveling and kind of activity levels are, and things that will vary with that will be things such as tick prevention, which is coming up shortly.
Yes, it
here.
is.
I
hear some ticks are out now. Some ticks are actually...
I'm sure, yeah. The conditions are right. The soil temperature warms up to a reasonable temperature for the ticks to get busy, and then with the moisture levels in the south-facing slopes, they will start to come up and quest, as they say, where they hang out at the tops of the grass and search for a warm body to grab on and get a blood meal. And so in the early spring, from about now through until June, we'll see ticks more in the southern exposures on the north side of the valley at this point, and then it'll kind of change as our climate gets a little warmer with spring, if it gets warmer, right?
Yes, not Thursday. If, when, hopefully, yeah. Another question that Chad and Melissa had about Elsie is sometimes her belly gets red, and when I mean belly, I mean the reproductive area. Is it too early for her to be going into some sort of ready to want to reproduce?
She could be close. I mean, some precocious individuals will begin to cycle a bit early. I would have guessed she's not quite there, but it may be that, you know, sometimes they get urine scalding, and when they don't pee clean every time, and then they get a bit of bacteria and a little bit red there. It could be that. So that's something to kind of, you know, just see how that goes. But you know, the debate about spaying and neutering, I mean, obviously groups like the SPCA have very firm beliefs, and by and large it is better overall to be leaving breeders to breeding to breeders, and they can do the hard work, because it is not cut and dried there.
No, not at all. Any other tips for the owners of Elsie so that they make sure they're making the most out of these early months? Well,
training's important, and socialization, if that's not been started, and you know, that it should have started by now, and I'm sure it has, but it's good to learn to kind of socialize and get along with other dogs at a young age, so that they don't get in fights and injured as they get older.
Right.
And then the other one that we're not the salespeople, but we see the benefits are things like pet insurance.
Sure.
Identification, you know, we do tattoos and microchipping when they're being spayed or neutered. But you know, as one owner said to me the other day, their dog with a lot of problems, she said, you know, I don't mind spending, you know, for 2 dogs $100 a month or a little less, because if it comes down to fixing a broken leg and missing a mortgage payment, I'm going to fix the broken leg. But with insurance, I don't even have to make that a decision that I work with. So it can work out to a person's benefit and the dogs hugely. But it sounds as well, though, that you were just saying a minute ago at the beginning of the interview that labradoodles tend to run into less problems than some other breeds. Did you mix breeds? Or they do. Yeah? They still get hit by the bus and stuff. I mean, those things can happen for sure. You can never predict it, but they are typically a pretty nice, minimally or very healthy breed of dog, you know, bred for the purpose of doing that. Well, I have to say that Elsie has been very well behaved during the segment. She is hoping to get one more treat, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to give her one more. Is that okay, Melissa? Melissa's sitting by watching me feed her dog. That brings up the one other comment, is at 6 months, as you can see on that chart, their growth rate slows and their appetite stays high, and you have to begin to watch their body condition and keep them in a kind of a plane of feeding that doesn't get them too heavy. Right. Watching the amount of chub on their ribs and and the thickness of their waist, like the rest of us. That's right, like all of us. We could all hit the dog park. Get out there and jog. Fantastic. All right, we appreciate you being on today, Dr. Hunter. Thank you for answering all of our questions. Columbia Summit Vet Hospital, the information there is on the screen if you have any questions. We will take a quick break. More Midday in just a few minutes. Stay with us.